Tensions reach a boiling point as Sanusi Lamido Sanusi is returned to power as Emir of Kano, 4 years after he was deposed. Governor State-Yusuf on Friday reinstated Emir Mohammed Sanusi II as the 16th Emir of Kano State. Sanusi received his letter of restoration to office at the government house in Kano. The governor said the decision was based on his competence, credibility, and popularity. He urged the new emir to be guided by the principles of Islamic teachings and to use his position to unite the emirate and foster harmony. Sanusi was the 14th emir before he was dethroned in 2020 after a fallout with former state governor and current national chairman of the All Progressives Congress APC, Abdullahi Ganduje. The conflict at the time saw the Kano House of Assembly pass a law splitting the Kano Emirate Council into 5. This move diminished the powers and influence of the Emir of Kano. Sanusi was subsequently replaced by the 15th Emir, Aminu Ado Bayero. Now the State House of Assembly has deposed Bayero and dissolved all the 5 Emirate councils, namely Bichi, Karaye, Gaya, Rano, and Kano. It passed the Kano State Emirate Council Repeal Bill 2024, which replaced the Kano State Emirates Council Law 2019. The bill gave the deposed emirs 48 hours to vacate their official residences. And in a new twist, a federal high court in Kano granted an order stopping the Kano state government from reinstating Sanusi. Justice Mohammed Liman granted the order in an application filed by Alhaji Aminu Baba Dan Agundi. To help us understand the high-stakes battle for supremacy and the collision of ambitions, we have with us in the studio a strategist and policy analyst, Baba Yusuf. Yusuf is the Group Chief Executive Officer of Global Investment and Trade Company, and we are welcoming to the program. Welcome, Baba Yusuf.
Thank
Once
you for
again, you have been all over
yes,
in our station trying to help us understand what is going on.
That's correct,
in Kano State. It's your home state.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's a dramatic turn of events.
Yes.
And so much struggle for power going on in Kano at this time. As an indigene and someone that is also an insider, generally, how does this make you feel?
Thank you very much. It's a watershed moment in the history of Kano. We are not happy with the situation in Kano because here we are with a logjam that has been created by politicians that are supposed to be hitherto focused on delivering good governance and dividends of democracy, who have inadvertently, sowed a seed of discord over the past years and brought us to where we are today. Of course, it is not new. Constance, economic and political objectives have consistently attacked traditional institutions, not just in Kano, but across Nigeria and especially across Africa and around the world.
So what you're implying is that the former governor, Alhaji Ganduje, who passed that law that dethroned Sanusi, basically misfired with that decision.
Well, I am of the opinion that it's a misfire, but more importantly, I am of the opinion that it is not in the best interest of Kano State as a whole in the long term. I believe it was a politically expedient decision taken by His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje to achieve a political interest, which I think the interest of the state should outweigh the short-term political interest, if you like. Of course, he's not the first one to take this decision. If we recall, in the Second Republic, late governor of Kano State, Alhaji Abu Karimi, took a hardline position against the then Emir of Kano, late Alhaji Ado Bayero, which almost resulted in his dethronement, but the resistance that was met was so stiff that what could happen was only to attempt to balkanize the Emirates, which later on was reconsolidated when Governor Bakunzo came into power in 1983. And you can go on and on, even in other states across Nigeria, to see this kind of bric-a-bracs happening. But consistently in Kano, we saw this thing happen. In the Second Republic, it happened also with His Royal Highness Sanusi I, build up to the independence in Nigeria, the grandfather of His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II. But interestingly, in this particular case, the Game of Thrones is within a family of the House of Dabo. That is what makes it poignant. And the fact that an outsider, as far as I'm concerned, a politician, came and injected this toxic situation in the royal house. And here we are having brothers across the line, or cousins, fighting daggers drawn for a throne that has lasted almost a millennium. Right. And that's sad.
Right. So from what we understand, Emir Sanusi is in the palace right now with the governor and the deputy. And then the deposed Emir Ado Bayero is in another palace with, of course, his supporters. He was out of the country when this happened. He flew back immediately. And we also hear that there were attempts to make sure that he entered the palace, and he was unable to do so. You have been you have been speaking to your folks in the ground in Kano. Share with us, what are you hearing about the general mood with what is currently going on?
With regards to the generality of the indigents and residents of Kano, it is calm, but everybody in their various silos or clusters are not happy. Whether you are supporting, His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II, or the 5, emirs, on this side led by Emir Aminu Ado Bayero. That is what it is at the moment. So there is an unholy silence in Kano because, of course, the security agencies, and rightly so, has stepped in and tried to ensure that there's law and order is maintained, because otherwise only God knows what would have happened by now.
Yeah.
Latest development is His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II, what I heard before I stepped in here, has actually left the palace to another location, out of the palace, as it were. So it's an unfolding scenario. We heard also the Commissioner of Police leading the team of security agencies in Kano, saying that they will respect the court order, that is opposing the reinstatement of His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II.
Yes,
that is where we are at the moment.
I was coming to that.
Yeah.
So it's the new twist of events.
Yes.
There is a court order.
Yes.
Obviously, those 5 emirs that were deposed are not happy.
Yes, of course.
They've been on seat for almost 4 years now. Is this order of any significance at all?
Well, it is significant. It is significant as far as I'm concerned, based on 3 reasons. It has 3 impacts. First of all, it has thrown a new vista, in the judiciary, which will become a landmark judgment that will set a precedence for good or bad in our polity. Recently, we know the judiciary has not been in such a good light with regards to certain bad precedences. We also heard, don't forget, on Friday, we heard from the side of the state government. In fact, the governor stated that that judgment, that ex parte that was granted by the judge, Justice Liman, from the United States of America. We want to confirm if this is true, and said he was going to report that matter to the NJC. Now, that is one leg of it, which means we may see a judicial logjam that may further plunge Kano into an institutional limbo, if you like they are doing in politics, like they are even doing in the war against corruption, whether deliberately or inadvertently. And secondly, because of that, it will continue expanding the toxic nature of events within the Kano traditional institution, and which will permeate into the society, because people obviously will take sides on that. And then politically also, it throws a big question of constitutionality of this interference by the judiciary when there is provision within the constitution, in the principles of separations of powers. The same process that dethroned Emir Muhammad Sanusi II is the same process that was used, to abrogate that dethronement and reinstate him. And here we have a court saying, there's an injunction. Of course, in fairness, they said it was to stay action until the substantive matter it had. But we know this has become a sickening, recurring tactic by the judiciary, which is bringing it to disrepute, to be honest, to be throwing this injunction and creating more problem than bringing solutions. So this is where we are, and I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out situation until there's an intervention at the federal level for this thing to be killed. Because I dare say, as a son of Kano, as an insider, this institution, for all concerned, including the president of this country, should remember that Kano has a significance in the scheme of things, traditional, spiritual, religious, cultural, for almost a millennia. It's a critical location that bestrides arguably one of the biggest emirates in Nigeria or in Sahel, because if you look at Kano, it's about 40 or over 40 local governments. And you had ab initio a reinstatement of a block of state bestrided by an emir. I hope and pray that reason, logic, fear of God, and the love of our country and our traditions will prevail over politics that will wane out in the next couple of years.
Kano is a politically volatile state.
Absolutely.
And you also have a population that they're politically aware.
Absolutely.
As well. Not only politically, in terms of culture,
absolutely,
traditions,
absolutely,
religion, and all of that.
Yeah.
How do you see this playing out? Do you think it would degenerate the way it's going?
Well, first off, the intervention given from the federal level to bring in the security agencies to restore normalcy and law and order is a very good, deft move. Because as a proponent of peace, if that is not done, things will definitely escalate, because we now have officially war inside in the Game of Thrones. So I don't expect things to wane out, especially with this, position taken by the court, which clearly is a breach of Constitution, the 1999 Constitution as amended. Of course, it's deliberate to give a breather to the other side to get a way to, probably wriggle out. I don't know how that will play out, because if we go back during our conversation, we'll see how people, yesterday someone said, this is the first time an emir that was dethroned is coming back. And I said, no, in the almost 1,000 years history of Kano, dethronement has happened over 8 times. And about 3 to 4 times, the emirs came and even lasted more than 10 years. And it has happened in Zazzau, Emirates, and across Nigeria. We can discuss that further. But we talk about now, we talk about the life and livelihoods of the citizens of this country. That's another aspect that I want to talk about, the impact. Because we have a governor that has hit the ground running, that is trying to struggle. Don't forget, he lost about 7 months by fighting the cases at the court before he got focused on governance. Now this issue will definitely distract him, and it will impact on the populace of Kano, socio-economically, and even politically, for the local politics and for the federal. Let us not forget, 2027 is coming, and that goes to the federal. From a strategic perspective, the issue in Rivers and the issue in Kano will be critical contributors to the outcome of possibly, potentially, what will happen in 2027. Because people in Rivers and people in Kano are beginning to see that there are interferences that are going to impact on their livelihoods in the short to mid-term, and appears they don't have a voice, and definitely their voice most likely will be heard in 2027.
So now that you mentioned the federal government,
yes,
we know that the former governor that deposed Sanusi is
yes,
now the chairman of the APC.
Yes.
And so there seems to be attempts at federal intervention.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that?
It's normal. That is why you see, because of the kind of political system and structure we run, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is one of the most powerful presidents in the world. And the system we run is such that if you have access, if you are in the ruling party and you hold such a critical position as the national chairman of the party, or you have the ears of the president, you have an upper hand, if you like, in this kind of situation. And therefore, definitely, you can see the interventions given for the 5 royal houses, if you like, with regards to what has happened now. Whether that will play out, and then we see the return of the 5 Emirates, is another kettle of fish, because I don't think our democracy has degenerated to the level that all the governors will now start losing their position. Fubara in Rivers, Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf in Kano, and then who next? And then the question is, do we really have those structures in place? And then what will be the implication? And for me, what is dear to me is the consolidation and sustainability of the traditional institution, because that is another issue we need to talk about. This is happening all over the place. At the twilight of the administration of Governor Yahaya Bello, he deposed 2 key emirs who hitherto, going back 100 years ago, were critical pillars and institutions of tradition, culture, and spirituality in Kogi State, one of which is the Emir of Kotonkarifi, and deposed them and now exiled them. So this, we may end up having a situation whereby different governors, different kings and emirs, and that will be very devastating. There
is clearly a conflict between modern day politics and traditions and culture and institutions, but the former has power, mainly because it also funds all these institutions. So what, in your view, would be a way to stop this kind of conflict happening? Because there's the saying that he would dictate, or he would pays the piper dictates the tune. Exactly.
Well, like I said earlier, Constance, we are passing through a phase of evolution. As a child of traditional institution and as a student of strategy, we must face this reality as children of traditional institution, adherents of spirituality, and the lovers of our culture as Africans, as Nigerians. You see, like I said, over time, from time immemorial, economic reasons, political reasons have driven this, removal or quest for traditional position. And then later on, pre- and post-colonial Nigeria, you see these things happen across Nigeria. Albeit it has been gaining momentum without people taking note, from the Oba Akintoyes in the 1841 to Oba Overenwem of Benin Empire when the colonial masters came. It's all about economy. It's all about politics, to Emir of Gandu, Mustafa Jakolo, who was deposed in 2005 but returned in 2014.
Even General Sani Abacha deposed the Sultan of
Sokoto. You can go on and on. And then even Oba Aderemi of Oyo Empire, the Alafin of Oyo, who was deposed by, late Premier of Western Region, late Obafemi Awolowo. This is only becoming more pronounced because of the evolution of our political evolution. Now, there are 2 sides to this. First of all, the traditional institution and the critical stakeholders within the traditional institutions who have over time played into hands of politicians and lost their face and lost their places inadvertently into the hands of these unscrupulous politicians, whereas they would have held a more apolitical position. Of course, every man is a political animal, but the earlier traditional rulers were more deft and more strategic in the way they play the politics. Now the bread and butter politics has permeated into the traditional institutions, and that is why they can look at these, leaders in the face and then do whatever they do, and you see an unholy silence of the entire traditional institutions who are supposed to be the fathers of the societies, including the governors, who will later go and kowtow to them. But now you can see the respect is waning, and it is permeating into the society. And if the traditional institutions do not embark into introspection of how they come to this stage, then that institution will fade away with time. And it will be sad, because we will lose our identity as Africans and become, quasi, colonial creations, and start asking ourselves, who are we in the next 10 years? Then on the other side of politics also, the politicians realize that this seemingly people that have become quote unquote inconsequential because of constitutional provisions are powerful in their own ways. Because if I don't want to take your time, but in another session I can tell you how each and every one of these emirs or kings that were deposed had consequences on those that affected those actions.
But there might be sympathy for Emir Sanusi, who was deposed, and also sympathy for Adebayero, who has been deposed recently. So some people will say everybody, you know, has a point.
Absolutely.
But when you go back to when Emir Sanusi was removed,
yes,
or was instated as
yes,
the Emir,
yes,
he had an ally
yes,
in Governor Rabiu Kwankwaso,
yes,
and that's why he was able to do that. So why shouldn't the sons or the son of the late Ado Bayero feel like they were also cheated out of power?
You see, that's
there's an argument.
You see, that is what I was saying. And when it happened on Friday, I said something, and I said it should be a lesson. Now, particularly to the royal house of Dabu, I'm referring to the royal house of Kano, that we people like us are born into intrigues of power and strategy and long-term vision. And to the extent that because of that Game of Thrones, we allow outsiders, quote and unquote, people that are not part of the traditional institution ab initio, to use politics to play into this institution to the extent that what I'm telling you is happening. At the end of the day, it will be a loss to the entire house of Dabu, because the caliber and the mien and the class, you know, and the respect that that institution has is waning. So Emir Sanusi, Muhammad Sanusi II, you know, Emir Amin Ado Bayero or Emir Nasser, all of them are losing because you lose that your stature and your standing. And that is the strategy of the politicians. The progressives start this move, you know, pre-colonial, post, you know, and people like Mala Amin Kano, who saw the traditional institution as rather a stumbling block to the progress of the common man, quote and unquote, may ultimately be succeeding now because the ruling class, traditional royal class, have played into the hands of these politicians. And like you rightly said, everybody can say, I've been cheated out of this. But how did you allow that to happen? When you are of the same kit and clan, when you are descendants of the benefactors of King Dabo, how did you allow this? You should be more strategic. And at the end of the day, you are linked by birth. You are linked by marriage. And bottom line, when daggers are drawn, even if you are fighting internally, you will never be on the same side with these politicians.
From your experience and history, as an insider as well, do you think there is any way to make any of this mess go away, to clean it up? It looks really messy. I'm
sorry, it's not going to go away. And it is not peculiar to Kano. Anywhere there is power, there is tussle. It depends on how it plays out. You can look at the Arabian history, you can even look at the Western powers, everywhere it emerges. Now it is, like I said, dagger drawn. Even at the end of the day, whoever gets to, whether the 5 Emirates now prevail or the consolidation with the reinstatement of Muhammad Sanusi happens, it will leave a deep scar. Already there were scars that we have all been managing within the royal house, whether you are a critical stakeholder within or without. Because before now, I remember how we used to communicate and engage 10 years ago or before now. And now there are mutual suspicions among the family and all that. Now this will further cause that divide. And I will say that this is not the first time. I mentioned Oba Akintoye, you know, of 1984 in Oba of Lagos. If you go to that history, he was dagger drawn with his brother, you know, Oba Kosoko, who took over from him. And then later he wriggled back into power, you know, through the British Empire. And he was reinstated, and Kosoko was ousted to Badagry, and later went to found areas like Ekpe and all that. So sibling rivalry within royal house, even the house of Saud. You have in Saudi the house of Saud and the house of King Fahd. You know, this, where there is power, there is tussle. So it's normal. But how it is managed internally is critical, because when you allow these economic merchants or political merchants to come and now turn you into second fiddle, then you have thrown away who you are.
How do you see Emir Sanusi if he wins? And I use the word win in quote. How do you see him handling all of this? He's not someone that shies away from a fight. It looks like he's ready all the time to go through fire.
I call him the constructive disruptor. And like you rightly said, he's a warrior that doesn't step down. But part of the qualities of a good warrior is also to recognize that sometimes, you know, the fight shouldn't be frontal. And I like the feedback he gave yesterday during his acceptance speech, when he said he recognizes that we are all humans and we can make mistakes, and that mistakes that were made in the past will be corrected. I was comforted by that statement, the fact that he made that statement himself because he's human. And emotional intelligence, with due respect to all, and recognizing the foundations and the pillars that brought the family together on this part, and the love for the entire people of Kano and the entire caliphate should be over and beyond personal interest. So I think if he's able to prevail, to building the reconciliation frameworks, to be able to now heal, albeit slowly, because I don't think things will ever be the same again, Constant, sadly so. But then the attempt to do that and to reduce the toxicity and win back people and build confidence and do more engagement will be very critical. That's why I love the speech of yesterday. If the 5 Emirates prevail as well, my plea to them is to recognize that they are bigger and they are more forward-thinking and far-reaching than the politicians that are playing these games with them. They should not be the pawns. They are chess masters, they are grandmasters. And here we are, it has become a spectacle like a home video. It is a sad spectacle. And for the others, in the other institutions, to recognize that this is becoming, following the law of osmosis and diffusion. And the more you sit back and start, I'm not saying they should rebel against the establishment because they are part of the establishment, but there should be constructive engagements and body movements to restore the sanctity and the respect of the traditional institutions across Nigeria, not just in Kano.
You know, it's really a den of intrigues, and you know how it's played and you understand it. What do you feel, or what do you think former Governor Ganduje is feeling right now? It's like he's been slapped in the face.
Yes, he will be feeling so, but he will have a grin on his face, but he's only able to have a temporary reprieve of this logjam that we have, whereby the two parties now are standing because of a court case. But I want also His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, whom I respect so much, who is true son of Kano, an elder statesman and a father, to also have some level of introspection. The same goes to Senator Rabi'u Musa Konkoso, our elder statesman, that this is for this long term. And how you position yourself now should reflect not just your own political career and ambition, but that of your children and your followers. And the interest is for Kano, which all of them have led as governors, and how it will be enduring and sustainable. Lagos is launching Blue Rails, Red Lane, new airports, becoming the 5th biggest economy. We are struggling with social media influencers. We are struggling with the throne of Kano. I don't feel happy about it. We are 1,000 years old. We should be blazing the trail on the positive side, not to become laughing stock, in the eyes of everybody.
Baba Yusuf, thank you so much for joining us on This Week.
Thank you for having me, Constance. Anytime.